Here we go, kids. Here we go.
And there's a K-Heads in the house. Good to see you. Salutations. Merry Christmas. And, oh yeah, Christmas is over. But it's okay. It's okay. And I think we're going. Hopefully it's going to work. We were down. Didn't have internet for a little while, but been... Hi, Xenomorphat. Big hugs. Big hugs. Yeah, so we are so grateful. Hey, Robbie, oneness, that we did not lose power so far. Knock on wood, knock on wood, knock on wood.
Christine Love, good day, beautiful souls. Vildan, hello. Starseeds, KK, Regina. Oh, we missed you guys. It felt like we were cut off from you without any internet. Felt very frustrating.
It was weird. It was weird. We were fortunate enough to be able to talk to people still on the phone, but it felt weird not to be able to go, haven't times they have changed so much because our lives are so intertwined with the technology there. I don't think there's any denying it anymore. And who else do we have? Jenny Pace, Renee, good to see you. Yay, Sin Havoc. Truth. Diana, good to see you. Peter Tonks, good to see you too. Golf Guy 23, yay, I'm glad you're here.
We are, guys. So, we heard like horror stories locally, man. It was just crazy. There's like about I guess it's about a 50-mile stretch of road, interstate, going from Mississippi, heading over to Texas, cutting through Louisiana. We heard that there were people that were stuck in their car there for almost 2 days on the interstate. I kid you not. People were posting this on Facebook that they had been stuck, their cars stuck on the highway for 2 days because it was taking them so long to move some tractor trailers that were stuck. And it was just insane. People were bringing people water and food, people that were stuck, to help them. I mean, again, these challenging times will bring out the best in some people, and they'll show their humanity. Can you imagine being stuck for 2 whole days in traffic?
Yeah, that's burr. So I don't know. I don't know if they had enough gas to run for 2 days or if they got cold or what they ate. We don't know the story. We just saw people out there stuck, and then people were starting to get ticketed if they didn't have a 4-wheel drive because they couldn't get from A to B and they got stuck, and they were tying up, emergency services because we had to have people out there to fix the power lines because there was other people freezing, running out of gas, or some people couldn't get their generators started even if they did have a generator, and then people running out of like propane to use on their heating systems. It just... this area, it's not, I don't want to say the storm wasn't bad because it was bad. It's just the infrastructure is not designed for this at all. Not at all.
No, I mean, when this happens in Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia even, you're not really prepared for it, especially, when you're like below the 33rd degree latitude, it's just, you're just not ready for it. Now, we'll talk about this weekend because this weekend, people might get hit with a doozy that might end up being as bad in some ways. But right now it's only looking like a 50-50 possibility. But yeah, it's crazy. So Regina said, did y'all get Starlink? Well, we ordered it. This did push me to order it because everything we do is connected with going online. And sometimes, some ways that we communicate with people, we do use the regular phone. We use Facebook Messenger. We'll use WhatsApp. Those are all the primary ways of doing communicating and having sessions with people. But I just thought we need to have backup now. This has not been the greatest internet service here at this location, and I do think Starlink. I've heard pretty good reviews. They're right now the thing that's kept me from doing the Starlink thing. Obviously, satellite, you worry about bad weather and that type of issue. But it was also $400 or $500 to get the equipment. At least in our area, the equipment was free. So, wow, that was a big change. The equipment was free, and it's $120 a month for the internet. And we could take this mini with us. So that's another big thing. Like when we go back out west, we'll be able to. We should be able to do videos from anywhere, do lives from anywhere with no problems.
Yeah, that's going to be very helpful. That way, if we do go travel somewhere, then we can we can just go online and it'll be great. And it was really nerve-wracking because the phone is usually hooked up to the Wi-Fi as well, and that way we have good cell service with people. So we had some instances where we couldn't hear people, and it was just really frustrating. So we did, it's what we do it's the price you pay to stay connected. It's like we want to stay connected. That's part of what we do. So there's that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I think it's worth it. It's another monthly expense. We do our best to keep monthly expenses to a minimum. That way, it's less to stress about. No intentions of buying a new car. We only have one vehicle. We're not a 2-car family. We only have one vehicle. It's 7 years old and it's not going to be replaced. It's just that simple. Although I wouldn't mind some sort of little quad or something in case of emergency. But yeah, we control the expenses as best as we can. And it was a crazy one. Absolutely crazy out there. There's a lot of crazy things. Now they moved the Doomsday clock up again. And it's at its closest point ever yet. It seems like I've said that before. So they keep inching it up closer. I've also said that I do believe that there's been a good portion of every generation that believes they're the last generation. That they're alive during Armageddon times, during, all the apocalyptical times. I think every generation has thought that. And we could actually go see, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, they've predicted the end of the world many times. Many different quote-unquote cults have predicted the end of the world to happen on this date, that date. And, of course, it never happens. And if we look to the Hindu Yugas, it just goes on forever, basically, in these cycles.
They do. And, the Doomsday clock is a very interesting thing. You got to wonder, where did that really come from? Who created the Doomsday clock? But, yeah, looking at the generation from generation, it seems like we're always complaining about the upcoming generation, like things are fraying just a little bit more and fraying just a little bit more. And who's to blame there? And I honestly think, it's the mainstream guidance system is who's to blame, because everything that's becomes popular out there, there's just something, to me, there's something fishy behind it.
Robbie says Avengers Doomsday is a movie coming out the end of this year. I thought they already did that, didn't they? But maybe something similar. And then John Hernandez says there is in Dilley, Texas, going to be some sort of protest tomorrow. So hopefully things will de-escalate. We're going to talk about that too, because, it just feel into everybody's energy is all I'll say, is feel into the energies. And, I rewatched that whole situation with the last poor person that lost their life. And yes, we could always say, well, we choose where we're going to be, right? For the most part, especially if there's things happening like protests and you go and you got to be right in the middle of it. People get, very strong feelings and thoughts with different causes. And so many people have lost their lives to different causes that in many ways turn out to be orchestrated, for lack of a better word, completely purposefully orchestrated, non-organic. And, this is the thing, the human race is really waking up. I mean, I'm looking at different posts by average people in different places. And what do I see? I mean, it feels to me like more than half people are woke up to a degree. And it's the highest degree that I've ever experienced in my life. The amount of people that understand that things are wrong, the amount of people that understand that it seems like every single government is just nothing but loaded with crooks taking advantage of their citizens. That's the big awakening. And here we go. We have a chance to have a revolution in mind and in concept. And the challenge is keeping that revolution peaceful and making it permanent, so we don't just fall back into some other type of dictatorship of one sort of another.
Yeah, I think we have to watch out for that, and we also have to watch out for things. What when you are considering going and doing something for a cause, where did that cause come from? I mean, me personally, I like to do something that is safe and I know is coming from my own heart. And, if I'm going to help, I'm going to help the person closest to me if I can, like my neighbor, my neighbor. Or if I know you guys, I kind of like to stay close to my own business, my own thing, because like Mike said, where do these causes come from?
Well, like Regina said, who can't see it by now? I mean, we've had so many things. One after another roll out, and even on channels like Max Velocity and Ryan Hall, when I look at the average people that are posting stuff, more and more people now are starting to make comments like, well, it's probably just weather warfare. I wonder if this is China hitting us, or I wonder if it's Russia, or the BRICS nations. People are catching on to the technology. And I think that's what makes these times so dangerous. And, again, when you look to the Doomsday clock, I remember doing a video on it. It was introduced in 1947, updated each year by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, which organizes the assessment of how close we are to self-inflicted end of humanity. I think, again, you can tie this back into the same sorts of people again that we're always talking about. It always seems to, things always seem to either track back to the UN or to maybe, the Rockefellers or the Red Shields when you get down to it. And it's just another tool to keep everybody tense. Here you can see how they've kept inching it forward. 1953, 2 minutes to midnight. 1991, 17 minutes. The Cold War ended. That was a big... I remember that year so well. I mean, I was thinking, sky is the limit. Boy, we could really move forward and not, be as Ozzy Osbourne was talking about, not have this thing hanging over us. It's not fair that we always have, the specter of nuclear annihilation hanging over us every minute of our lives. It does create a lot of loosh, doesn't it? Certainly does. 2020, 100 seconds. 2023, 90 seconds, when Russia threatened to use its nuclear weapons in its war with Ukraine. 2025, 89 seconds, and now 85 seconds. So they ticked it 4 more seconds. Yeah, again, we need to change our complete mindset. Complete, and I think a lot of people are totally ready for that right now.
I think so, but what exactly can change our mindset? A lot of people are really stuck in their ways, and heck, I mean, we're tired too. We're exhausted. I think this rat wheel, this rabbit cage that we're all stuck in, it can be tiring. Even just being here, thank goodness we didn't lose power. We only lost internet. it was exhausting just sitting here waiting and wondering, are we going to lose power? Because then you have to think about all the things. Well, what if you do lose power? How long is the generator going to go? How much gas do we have before we have to go get more gas? It's like, sitting here, if it's not that, it's something else. Like everyone is just sitting there holding their breath, and even existing is exhausting. Hey, I said that.
Thanks for the update there, Robbie. So yeah, X-Men Apocalypse and then Avengers Infinity War. That Avengers Infinity War, that was in 2 or 3 parts, I forget now, but boy, that introduced some amazing concepts, which are straight out of the Hindu Vedic books, such as, the time travel. Could we go back in the past, to change the present? Yeah, it's kind of there. In fact, we always kind of have the ability to loop back. The guides have said that when you incarnate, you're literally creating a new world that later on you will be able to come back and explore, right? Remember The Sims and other stuff like that? My daughter loved The Sims. My son loved this other one where you create a whole ecosystem and then the whole planet from scratch. Well, I think we actually do that on a very, very high level.
Nina, I've seen a whole lot of that out there lately, a whole lot of the fear porn out there lately, and it's bad. I mean, it's bad. This is like an old kind of mysterious type of fear porn. It's something to go back and look at and pick apart. And to me, it's not too fear. I don't feel the doomsday clock is fear porn. I find it to be curious. That's just me. But lately there has been something, there have been some things out there, with new illnesses and all kind of stuff that I have seen that really has some people on edge. And when I see that, that's when I think, that's really the fear porn. We're all stressed out enough. We don't need another moment where we think like they're gonna ratchet down the whole planet again.
Oh, there you go. We have Silvergeddon going on too. Yeah, absolutely. And it's what we expected this year. I do think this year is the year that we literally have the introduction of a new monetary system. It may not be going to last long, and we might have a second monetary system come in shortly thereafter. And maybe the third or fourth will finally settle in and actually work, or maybe not. Again, I think we'd be much better off with barter and trade and something else in which you could not have the ticks and leeches of society, just sucking the energy off of everybody. No more taxation like we've had. Oh, hey, the IRS is going to cut you a break this year. The IRS should not exist. Again, 1913 was an illegal takeover when you really look at it closely.
Yeah. So it's, I don't know. It's just Mother Nature stops for no one. All eyes on winter storm. I'm just watching the storm right now. I'm watching the storms because I don't trust that everything is natural. And what I find to be so sad this year is like when I was little, you could eat the snow. It really wasn't a problem. But now it's like you don't dare. If you brought snow from inside when I was little, where we lived in Idaho, it was clear, it was pure, it was pristine, it was beautiful. When it melted, it was okay. But now you bring that stuff in and you melt it, you have all kinds of weird stuff in there. So I don't know what they're doing with the winter storms. I don't trust it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the Weather Channel, when I looked at their long-range forecast back around, I think it was around Thanksgiving, of course, that long-range forecast could be way off. But they were talking about, for the most part, a way above average temperature, for most of the United States forecast. We were going to be above. But what we see is it's frigid below. Almost every state is running, very much below. And now that the polar vortex is bipolar, literally, it's probably going to stay that way for a bit. Probably going to stay that way. So In other words, Red Shield run, because the Red Shields, they own the Weather Channel. They were very, very wrong. Now, I think, again, we've said that most of the statements we could take from the system and we could inverse them, and we're going to get closer to the truth. So what were they doing? Were they really just that far off? If they were that far off, then the Weather Channel is pretty useless. Or, is it that they're trying to, set you up for what they know is going to come, and that again is the opposite of what, the public is told to expect?
While we have a lot of people in the room, I just want to set the intent for tonight. We have another storm coming in, and we still have people recouping from this storm. So let's set that intent that those folks who run into trouble definitely get the help that they need and are ready and prepared for whatever happens to them. So I just want to set that intent, and then we will do the dings and the prayers and the updates later. Thanks.
Absolutely. So, a little bit of moderation across Texas and the South this afternoon. But if you're on the East Coast, be aware, because there's definitely the chance for a strong storm that could take place along the Carolinas and go on up into New England. Definitely mid-Atlantic area, take note. A possible blizzard. Now, it could stay totally offshore or mostly offshore, or it can come in. And some of the forecasts that I'm looking at with this coming in is going to be huge. The potential for, in some cases, half a foot to maybe more than a foot of snow in some areas on the East Coast. Like right here, if this turns out to be true, then, around Raleigh, you might be looking at a foot or more. Some areas, 16 inches of snow, and some areas 20 when you get up closer towards Virginia Beach. So, this is one to keep an eye out on. This is a GFS. The Euro is not showing it being as intense, but the Euro is still showing 10 inches, in North Carolina. So, it could be, a serious whammy. So I would definitely stay prepared.
It's another situation where just people, the infrastructure, and today I saw also on social media that the entire roof collapsed on a Shell station. Like the little bit of tin they had up there couldn't even handle this much snow. And, like I said earlier, we did lose our, we had a little greenhouse and it had a tarp on it, and that started to hold some snow or some ice rain or whatever it was. And it didn't last too long. And that metal just broke. The whole thing crumbled, and we heard this big rumble in the middle of the night. And that was really, really scary because it's kind of a big greenhouse thing. I didn't think that would fall though, because those metal legs they were pretty strong. So that felt really weird.
Yeah. So, I know, like up where you are, Robbie, in Massachusetts, some of these models do show that you guys, I know you got a decent amount of snow from the last storm. And this may again bring a repeat. Right now, too early to call. Maybe come somewhere around Wednesday, Thursday, we'll be having a better picture. But we'll use our intent as always. I also wanted to just note, this is Sapporo, Japan, right? Sapporo is known for their beer, amongst other things. 10 fatalities reported across Japan. Severe snow, heavy snowfall. Sapporo, they got over 3 feet of snow. First time since 2022. On Sunday, January 25th. Look at this. Accumulations in the Hakoda Mountains reached 14.8 feet. Well, we saw like snow literally 10, 12 stories high in Kamchatka, which is not too far away, from where this is in the bigger scheme of things. And at least 10 fatalities. At least 24 was the last number I had heard for the storm we just went through. And, let's just check while I'm thinking about it, the quakes. That's a little bit unusual. This one out here, a 4.8. That is a little unusual. 10 kilometers depth, North Pacific Ocean. Sweetie, what do you feel with this? Do you have anything unusual with this?
My legs are vibrating with that one.
Yeah,
Sure.
This feels weird to me.
It feels really weird because my legs feel very weak.
Remember, I've showed you the little town of Elgin. This was my home for a while. Elgin, South Carolina, they got another quake, 2.1. They get these swarms here, and I am completely convinced it's from Fort Jackson right here. And, again, I had a lot of fun working with soldiers from Fort Jackson on Eastern States Paranormal Society. We did a lot of investigations all over the Southeast. It was a blast. They were great guys. They got shipped out to Germany, so it was no more, but I had a good time. And absolutely, there's some sort of extension going on in the underground military base in this area. It's just something to make note of if you're in the area. And by the way, South Carolina, we're going to touch on it. It's the fastest growing state right now. I moved there in 2007. Loved South Carolina. It was definitely one of my favorite states to live in. And, this right here looks kind of normal. Maybe a few more off the coast than we typically see. Again, this red line right here is the fault line. This red line, oh, that's the big one. Because when we do get the big one, if you haven't heard of this before, there are some scientists that believe that this whole area over here to the west could shift and run north, even to the point where Los Angeles could literally end up close to San Francisco or north of San Francisco, with the quote-unquote big one coming. So it's just interesting to watch it. I don't like seeing this one here. This one gives me a weird feeling.
No, I mean, now that I feel into it a little bit more, it made my legs feel weak, and it's frequency. There's some type of frequency that's weakening the area or changing the vibration. It's doing something, and they're doing some really, really funky things with frequency that it's just, I'm not liking what I see coming out into the world right now. There's good frequency, and then of course there's bad frequency, but I think they're going to start making it look like, oh, well, we need to make adjustments to the frequency. So we're going to use this frequency to offset that frequency. And is that a good thing for our bodies? This makes my legs feel weak. And I think that's what all these frequencies are doing to us. And we have to be very, very mindful of the artificial frequency.
Yeah. Just my impressions are, I think this is related to a ship or ships and technology. That's really what I feel. Because I've always felt that the plan is, before they do a Red Dawn type scenario on the U.S., they want us descending into civil war. This is part of the plan, or close to it. And then also we would be hit with some quote-unquote natural disasters. Look, we just got a snowstorm that wreaked a lot of havoc everywhere from Nashville down to the Texarkana area and Arkansas. Mississippi was hit really hard, and other areas, of course. I mean, they got a lot of snow all throughout the whole eastern side. Now, if this second storm is, say, artificially enhanced and steered, then you could have, again, a crippling storm on top of that coming through, and then the quakes, that would be coming. So, when you look at the strongest quakes, they're not huge. 5.7 is the biggest. It's over here. And then we have a couple in the mid 5.3 and 5.1. So nothing too huge. But this one just sticks out like a sore thumb to me. And so, these crazy weather events. Now you got another series of atmospheric rivers forecast to bring heavy rain to the Pacific Northwest this week. So again, this is all weight bearing on top of the Cascadia area. which, again, the experts say is overdue. So 4 atmospheric rivers forecast to impact the Pacific Northwest from Tuesday through January. And by the way, our KK had felt some shaking. There were some small quakes up in the greater Seattle area, by the way, too. Rainfall totals 5 to 10 inches over the Olympic Peninsula and 2 to 5 inches across northern Oregon coast ranges and the Cascades. And then we have an EF2 tornado that hit downtown Geneva, Alabama. That was the strongest since December of 2000. It was the EF2. A lot of crazy weather events.
It is, and I was just reading in the chat. If I can go back, I'm trying to find the person. K. Henry. Hi, K. Henry. 3133 said, yes, Mr. MBB showed 2 videos of snow burning in the U.S. 1,000 miles apart. Oh my gosh, that's just nauseating. And it's sad. But that's the world that we live in. And if we don't just keep telling each other, don't eat the snow, people might think, or children might even think, that it's okay. And no, it's not okay to eat the snow. That's the world that we live in.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, lots of interesting and cool things, as Heyoka or Peter was bringing up. And it's weird, I'm getting like a real high-pitched noise on the right ear, which the right side is the galactics, usually. Interesting. Victoria sets new all-time high temperature of 120 degrees. This is a severe heat wave going on in Australia. So we see the extremes do continue. It's not all just cold, but it is record cold, it's record heat, it's record droughts and record flooding. And then we get into the geopolitical side of things. Here's the real yucky side. Trump knifes Little Napoleon, Border Patrol commander, over Minnesota mayhem, and declares we're going to de-escalate this thing. So there was some photos of this photo. I mean, could you make somebody up to look more neo-Nazi? I mean, I don't think you could. It just feels like a photo op that had to happen to heighten the tensions. And it also looks, just like Cindy pointed out, like the Denver airport murals, the outfit, again, that the soldier with the very sharp Islamic-looking blade was holding back in those mural scenes. There's so much programming always going on constantly with humanity. We're being pre-programmed all the time. It's just part of what's happening. The conditioning and so many people, everybody really in some way, shape, or form is programmed from birth, and we might not recognize it. We just think, well, we're just learning the ways of our parents. Well, our parents were indoctrinated, and then we become indoctrinated.
Yeah, I think that's important to bring up. So very well-intended people that love us and we love them, they teach us things that they were taught, and that's just natural to have these things passed down. But then what is really true? What is true? And then I think our system is so extremely warped to the point that when you do hear what is true, you feel that is warped. So I think that's where we're at.
So Gregory Bovino has been relieved of being up there in Minnesota to try to de-escalate things. And it looks like Kristi Noem is taking a big part of the negative press. It's good to see them de-escalate because, again, the big purpose here is to destroy us from within. And then the U.S. can be dealt with because, again, the U.S. is hard to deal with. 342 million people, over 400 million guns. It's not easy to just push the U.S. out of the way and introduce a new world system. So it has to be done from within, and that's been going on for a very long time.
JW says, Happy Transformative Tuesday, Mike and Cindy. Well, I like that. I like that name, Transformative Tuesday. And tomorrow, I'm not sure what we're going to call Wednesday, but I hope you were here to hear the intention for tonight, JW, and I hope you stay for it.
Yes, welcome, welcome. And Bob Hawk says, let's all become undoctrinated. Yes.
Let's do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the thing that we try to do.
We're trying to do here.
And again, people wake up to certain things in certain stages, and maybe they shed the geopolitical indoctrination and they recognize it's just all puppetry in a game. But then they still have the religious side of it. Or maybe it's the medical side. Or maybe they woke up to the medical, but they're still politically indoctrinated. Again, it takes time.
I know. And then Kelly says Trump looks like a mob boss. If you were meaning Trump, I don't know. He looks like a mob boss, she said. Yes, he does. They all do. The boss, right?
Yeah, again, it's part of the show. And more people than ever are saying, yeah, they're just all actors. This is coming out big time. It really, really is. Japan's prime minister to the U.S., we're in if China attacks during joint operations. Sanae Takaichi just spelled out exactly when Tokyo gets involved if the U.S. and China clash. She said they won't automatically jump in, but if American forces get attacked during joint operations, like evacuating citizens from Taiwan, then Japan will respond. Now, again, Japan was kept from building up militarily because of World War II. It's really interesting when you do look deeply into the history of not just World War I and II. Because what did they achieve? They achieved, huge levels of destruction and depopulation. And then we also have the introduction of new economic systems. Everything is always part of one bigger picture. And it's just recognizing that. Then Japan's Ministry of Defense confirmed North Korea fired 2 ballistic missiles into the East Sea, both splashing down within minutes. This comes right as a Pentagon official wrapped up a 3-day visit to South Korea, so maybe just a little send-off. Now, this I had heard before, but this really kind of got the blood boiling a little bit. This is Survival Lily, who is big into archery, too, enjoys archery, but she gives the geopolitical situation in Europe, and she was talking about a letter that thousands of people got.
Norway. In Norway, apparently the army is preparing the population for war. In light of the unrest in Europe, the Norwegian army is already preparing the population for the possibility of war. Thousands of people received letters on Monday informing them that houses, cars, boats and other equipment could be confiscated in the event of a war.
Did you catch that? Houses, boats, and other property could be confiscated. They could take everything from you in war as a wartime emergency. And they even can. There's laws in effect in the United States where they could do the same thing to us. And they could literally force us to work in labor gangs.
Mm-hmm. And they've passed all of these laws, I think, under those fancy names called a Patriot Act or something nice like that, where they kind of cover it up with a really nice word, and then they do the ugliest things underneath it. And I think that's what we are here talking about, and we are uncovering as much of this as possible so that people know what's underneath the fluff. And it's not very nice. And the world that's been created is not the world that I want my children to grow up in and my grandchildren to grow up in. It's just not fair. And all of us coming together like this, we're making a better world, a different world, because our energy matters. And once all of us understand that, and not just, one person per family, right now it's maybe one person per family understands how important their energy can be. When everyone understands that, then this world can change.
Yeah, so Piggly Wiggly Wednesday, that's a good one. Piggly Wiggly Wednesday, we like that, JW.
Yes.
Yeah, again, here you go. They're talking about taking everything that people own away from them because it's a wartime situation. But the reality is the politicians bring about the war. And then they reap the profits of all this. They are invested in, again, the military-industrial complex. When you get down to it, they're invested in the banking system. They're invested in, again, some of the pharmaceuticals and things that will be used to help people, quote unquote, that get injured during war and have illness and injury. So they make money off of everything, and if that's not enough, they'll literally just take your property away from you and force you to work.
I mean, they have this little hang up with control.
Yeah, there's just one simple thing that the world needs to do. It's to kick out every aspect of global governance, because none of it's good, whether we're looking at China, Russia, or here. When you get down to it, the entire system is just absolutely, completely corrupt. When you learn about how, again, the feds have worked with the mob, with the mafia, and, they also work with cartels in some instances. It's because they're all criminal organizations. They all truly are criminal with crimes against humanity. How many regime changes has there been with the U.S. involved in, for instance? It's because they do compete against the other crime families. This is exactly what we have seen with the mob, and this is what we see with the geopolitical situation. They're only really in competition with each other to see who could be the top leech.
I know, the top poo-poo head.
Yeah, so this is not a good situation. Thank you, Lily. Here you have a NASA jet erupts in flames as it skids down a runway in Houston. There's been so many issues. All crew members safe. No additional details about a mechanical failure were given. We've had so many plane issues and helicopters and stuff. Now, when you're talking NASA, too, I mean, this could be something to do with some sort of sabotage, possibly. Could be. It's possible in a wartime scenario. President Trump just stunned Gavin Newsom by signing an executive order for the feds to take over the LA wildfire rebuild and permitting process. Newsom has failed. Trump is saving the people. Well, again, that's to be determined because, there's a lot of, there are good things on the Maha front. We see a lot of things being exposed and being rectified, or at least they're working towards bettering things health-wise. But man, there's a lot that leaves to be desired with everything else, really.
I mean, how does he keep getting like in his shoes? Like how does Newsom keep getting where Newsom's at? It looks a little suspicious at this point.
Kelly Kibo 3497, welcome to Evolutionary Manifester. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining the growing family. And it is actually growing again, which is good because we were like stifled for so long. Yeah. It does feel like the momentum is increasing on the side of light. And we do know it's just a matter of time before the system collapses in on itself. It already kind of is. I think what we're trying to do is to make it a gentle landing. It's kind of like, our spaceship Earth right here. We've hit some serious turbulence, and how do we keep things afloat and, guide it to a nice gentle landing in the Bronze Age?
Yeah, and thank you so much, Kelly. We appreciate that and all of your guys' support so we can do these videos and keep sending out this information and coming on here and creating the intentions and putting out the positive energy. All of you guys make that possible. So thank you very much for your support. And we do our best to bring you all the things. So thank you so very much.
Well, again, Max was saying, what about Iran? Well, there's a lot of ships in the area. And, there was actually some reports of some sort of explosions that were happening today, but I didn't hear anything confirmed. I'm just going to check now because, here we were disconnected with no internet, and that really made things rough because we're scouring every waking hour. If we're not in meditation, we are also doing, basically research or trying to keep ourselves as healthy as possible. And thank you, Keith. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Keith.
So, U.S. airlift intensifies. C-5 super galaxy heads east, reportedly carrying missile defense systems. Reports of an explosion near Iran's Parshan nuclear site. Trump has confirmed a big armada of warships moving towards Iran. So, again, when will that happen? It does seem that many sources have, it looks like, wow, no, that one's older. Yeah, a lot of people have reported that there was an explosion, but we don't have anything that's completely confirmed. And again, there's so much disinformation too, and then there's hiding stuff. But I think I hope it doesn't happen. It feels like they are, like they think the Iranian regime is just so close to complete collapse that one nudge might collapse it, or one nudge might unify the people. It might actually unify a lot of nations against Israel and the United States. So, again, we don't get all the info like, say, Trump gets. And a lot of presidents, haven't gotten even close to all the info because presidents are not very high up on the need to know, even though you would think that they are the ones that get all the info. No. It's been declassified that they're actually kept in the dark on a lot of things, especially when you're talking about at the extraterrestrial side of things.
And thank you, Vildan Atman. We appreciate it so much. And John and Jen, love you guys too. Thank you very, very, very much. It definitely goes a long way to help support us and just keep us on here doing what we're doing and pulling everyone together. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Vildan. Thank you, John and Jen. Much love, guys. So, yeah, like Cindy was saying, it's just ridiculous. To me, Newsom and Trudeau are like the same actor. Their energy feels exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I would venture to say they're both dunces. I don't think they're that intelligent, but I don't think they want intelligent people to run countries. They just need people with a little mojo, and whether that mojo is for riling people up in a positive or negative way, I think either side could be useful to the system.
I think they can too. Useful in what way? Everyone has their own way of leveraging things. I think energetic leverage is something that we all need to learn how to do. It's like you have this energy coming at you. What's the best way to leverage it in your life to put you in a position where you can continue to spread love and light to as many people as possible?
Yes, and again, thank you guys for thumbs up and sharing the videos and hyping if you're able to hype. I have no idea why that hype thing only shows up now and then.
I don't get it anymore.
I don't. Yeah, I hardly ever see it, and then every now and then it'll pop up. Calgary, though, here you go, says they're packed for Alberta independence. I think it'd be great to see countries break up into smaller units. When you see the EU break up and it doesn't exist anymore, that would be a positive step because, again, this is how they control the masses. And if we break it up into smaller pieces, if the U.S. was 50 independent countries, states, so to speak, you would have a lot harder time getting, resolutions and things through. And we saw the USSR break up, and that felt very, very positive. It felt like we were heading in the right direction. Of course, we all know that was just part of a bigger plan. But yeah, we'll Alberta claim independence? Will it leave? Canada, will it join the U.S. or will it go totally independent? We need people to think more independently. Yet, in some states, they're doing a better job than other ones at especially helping people's health. Florida finds 78% of tested popular candy brands contain elevated levels of arsenic. How could this be? Wait a minute, you're giving arsenic to the kids? And adults too, of course. There are quite a few adults that nibble on Three Musketeers, Snickers, and Skittles. But you can add in there Nerds, Kit Kats, and Jolly Ranchers. All tested for high arsenic.
The 33 traditional.
33 traditional candy brands. 33 all over. Yeah, stamped. Yeah, again, you can see the symbolism. Arsenic is a known toxic element. Long-term exposure, particularly during childhood, been linked to developmental impacts. Immune system problems, increased cancer, and you could add in there too all sorts of cognitive problems.
It's just awful. It's just awful because I get it. Parents are busy and they might not be paying attention, or maybe you are a parent and you pay very close attention and you don't have your children eat that stuff, but then they want to go over to their neighbor's house or they want to play with their friend and their friend has it. It's almost impossible to keep this stuff out of children's hands. Why is it so easy for our children to get the poison? Why? Why is it so easy? Yet it's so hard. If you want to homeschool, you have to jump through all of these hoops. And that's not so easy. Our children need to be learning useful things like how to garden and which plants are medicinal and how, how to run a farm and how to build a house. All of these very useful skills is what should be taught. And food to nourish the brain and the body. And that's just not, it's just not happening at all. And it's frustrating. Who do you point the finger at? Who do you blame? Everyone is so busy on their own level and with their own things. It's hard to pull everything together and do everything the exact right way in this world that we live in today.
Yeah, absolutely. And here you go. Test in the snow. Yeah, let's take a little snow. Let's melt it. What's in there? Heavy metals, nanoparticles. Yeah, absolutely. This is what Cindy was saying. You wouldn't eat the snow now. When we were kids, we used to joke about making snow cones. And, not now. And I saw tons all around this storm. There was tons of chemtrails, tons. And it's illegal in this state. It's illegal in Tennessee. It's illegal in many states. It happens because they're way above the law.
We're going to collect a little bit of this snow here. Watch out, Luke.
So she collects snow, she melts it, she puts it under the microscope, and again, she ends up reading the results, which is a consequence of the daily chemtrail spraying, and it's all toxifying us. So, this undeclared war where they're literally trying to kill us. They are literally trying to kill us and, everybody that is here.
And she does these tests, right? She does the things. And who are we going to tell? It's not like you can go to our parents and say, hey, look what's happening. Who do we bring this information to? That's what I want to know. I used to be a very resourceful person when it comes to what I used to do for a living, my work, my job. I was very resourceful. If somebody brought me something and said, hey, there's this problem here, I went and I figured it out. It's like a black box, all the fun problems came to me. Hooray. But, she gets this snow, and I think it's wonderful that she gets it and she makes a video out of it. But then what do you do with it? Where do we go from there? How do we take this information and have it make a difference to anybody or anything? How can we take this information and make our lives better? It just seems like we should be able to go somewhere, but we can't. We're stuck. Okay, so you have information. Then what do you do with it? Well, I guess if you think about it, we do the things that we can do and you avoid it. right? We avoid it. We make sure we're filtering our water and we're doing the things. And I guess that's what we do on this channel is we help others, people who want to know, find out, figure out a different way, because it's not going to do any good to take this to any kind of authority because they're all in on it.
Yeah, there was a comment about Mindanao looking for independence, and what I see, it looks like there's chaos and people actually coming out with rocket launchers. I know there's some parts of the Philippines that are very dangerous, where literally they're just totally controlled by cartels. Very scary. But yeah, I think there is a lot of push for independence within a lot of countries. This is the beginning. And this is going to turn into a global revolution eventually, hopefully sooner than later, in which people are not going to take part in the system, and they're going to break it up into smaller pieces. And that's where things really start to change.
I think, it starts with us, the individual, right?
U.S. population growth slows sharply, immigration numbers plunge. New census estimates show the effects of falling birth rates and President Trump's anti-immigration policies. So 342 million as of July 1st is what they tell us. Again, I don't know if we have 8 billion people on the planet. Who knows? There's 8 million in New York. That's what they say. I don't know. I mean, I really doubt the numbers they give us. It seems to me probably all overinflated. When we drive across country, what do we see? There's a big city here, then lots of small towns, and a lot of woods still, and a lot of deserts still, and a lot of places with nobody. There's more places with nobody than places with, tons of population in a very dense area. If you go through Dallas, Fort Worth, absolutely, that is packed. And some other areas too, along the whole, northeastern area there from Connecticut into New York and down through New Jersey. But, I think, again, I think they vastly overestimate our population. And it's part of what they do. So the U.S.'s nation's population increased by about 1.8 million over the previous year, stood at 342 million on July 1st, growth rate of 0.5%, which is the lowest since 2021. But the interesting thing, too, is when you look at it, they've shut down now the border, to where it's not really flooding in. There was probably at least 10 million people that entered illegally in just a handful of years. A tremendous amount of people coming over all the time, and that has stopped. Now, the fact is that people are not having babies where they can or can't. That's, we understand. Fertility rates, they're just plummeting. Sperm counts, they're plummeting. Everything is plummeting. It's actually going the other way. A sharp drop in birth rate also contributes to the slowdown. Birth rate has been falling since the Great Recession in 2008, and new births outpaced deaths by only about 518,000 in the latest period, which is higher than during the peak of the Plague Upon the Land pandemic when deaths were soaring. Yeah, again, the reality is the world's population is in decline. Steep decline. Do you think it could have anything to do with all the toxic stuff in the snow?
It's definitely a mess out there. The world, the weather. We're all just kind of trying to hang in here with each other and do the best we can. It's not easy right now. So if you're one and you're struggling and things just don't feel right, well, you're spot on. You're in the right place.
Now, this is a little astrology, which, Cindy didn't see anything that I planned. She's always like watching it for the first time like you guys do. But Neptune, which is the planet of universality, moves into Aries, the sign of individuality, for a period of 14 years. This ingress begins a whole new cycle around the signs that Neptune will complete in 165 years. Neptune is homogeneity and themes that influence collective consciousness. New mindsets and new trends. Redistributes power from the top down to the masses. We need that. We need that. And see, it's in the stars that this time is going to be like it. And it's in the stars that they're going to fail miserably. Their time is coming to an end. Yet they could make our life miserable if we allow them to. And the quicker we could get more people to wake up, the better. So there's going to be a lot of challenges ahead. Risk of grid collapse. One of the things that hit me was, we have 2 generators, but I only have so much gas. What if we're without power for a week? I couldn't keep it going with the amount of gas that I have. So then you think about long-term propane. But there was nobody that had propane available, for 100 miles because everybody had bought it out. So, it's making me think, geez, do we look into investing and getting a big propane tank delivered? Just because we only have electric. Do we invest in trying to set up solar? Get a wood stove. There's so many things that popped up with this outage because, we don't usually get that cold here. We could usually survive even if there was no heat just fine. But when you look at what's changing with the weather, it really makes you think about things a little bit more intensely. But you could see the disruption of power is coming. Things are going to be breaking down. There's no way that it's not going to be breaking down. We're going to have a lot more blips like we just have with these storms.
We have some pretty wild planetary alignments coming in 2026 and that are actually going on right now with these planets. So
by the way, the last time we had this was 1861, which was the beginning of the Civil War.
There you go. It's going to be the breakdown of everything. I think this is people figuring out who they truly are and pushing back what they have been forced to become. I think it's about finding out, digging deep inside of ourselves and knowing that there's something's just not right and pushing back and making change for ourselves and finding that power and that desire and that ability to create change. The problem that I see is that we are actually very, very soft, like Mike said, if we were without power for even just a week, we're not ready for that. We are not ready for that. I need certain things. I need my ozone. I need, I do EWAT, exercise with oxygen therapy. I do all kinds of therapies. I was really sick a few years ago, so I have to do these things. And in doing those things, it keeps me healthy. But if I were pressed up against a wall, like physically for a long time, it would probably pull me back down to a place that I wouldn't want to be. So that concerns me because it's not just me. What I noticed also on social media, there was a lady, she had some type of a transplant and she needed medication so that her transplant would not reject, and she couldn't find it and she was panicked. And during this winter storm, no one had it and the trucks weren't getting in any medication. So that really hit home, because what if somebody does need their medication? We try not to we do our best to figure things out naturally, absolutely, but people need certain things. And what if all of a sudden they can't get them? So I do think a grid collapse in that sense, a lot of people would be hard up, and that does really, really, really bother me sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is really interesting when you look at what this symbolizes. Neptune in Aries at its worst can represent the loss of human autonomy and freedom to exist, but this in turn can engender liberation battles, and its highest form, non-violent Neptune battles Aries. We can see it, because we that want change are, I think on the whole, we're non-violent, and we want to do it through means that's going to bring a lasting peace. And what we can see with the system is it's very violent. It cultivates violence. It uses violence to achieve the mean to an end. So, this is a real clash that we have going on. Neptune and Aries last time, 1861 to 1875. That was right on the eve of the American Civil War. It was when it started. So here we go. And again, that Civil War was not what we're told. It's got more to do with, again, eradicating certain aspects that the system hadn't eradicated fully, in my mind. There's definitely a lot more to that Tartarian thing. And, perhaps there was perhaps there was a period of time where we had wrested power away from the system to a pretty high degree in certain areas, and then the system came roaring back, violently taking power back again. And it always does it by pitting us against each other. So there was an an article that really hit me. Zelensky orders the army to kill tens of thousands of Russians, giving them a quota on how many Russians to kill a month. And, it just made me think I would never, do that for anybody. If somebody's coming on your property and shooting at you, then yeah, that's one thing. But when you think about people that volunteer because they're indoctrinated into a patriotic point of view and they don't understand that all these wars are banker wars for profit and control and just keeping the human population at a manageable level, oh my God, it's so misguided.
And Robbie is bringing up, Saturn's going to come into the picture as well. And, when we look at Saturn having its structure, limits, responsibility, reality, time, and karma, when they come together, they can make the dream real or they can watch the illusion collapse. And so, yeah, Saturn, I see Saturn as, that's a big fat wallop of karma is what it is. So that's going to look like us getting ready for something bigger to happen and being able to stand on our own a little bit better. Yes, Lily is worried about her water well. It runs on electric. Yeah, we have to get out there and somehow get some solar hooked up to that, Lily, and then solar panels and generators like that can happen. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And I wish there was an easier answer for people who simply cannot pull this stuff in very quickly, because it does take time and quite a lot of money to do some of these setups. But that's just where we're at, and that's why we have these conversations.
Robbie said Tartaria Thursday. That sounds like something we could do. That would be a lot of fun. Yeah, absolutely. When you look at this, this is talking about how the EU is literally starving dissenting experts. Yeah, I think the breakup of the EU would be one of the best things. That would be a big start. Because again, we see them implementing everything they want to do over there in the EU the easiest. It's come easiest over in the EU, but then also Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, pretty much the same. We need to break it up into smaller pieces. Here, this is showing a star fort built on top of an ancient tree stump in Brescia. And it says you can still see this on Google Earth. I think these things are fascinating. We Devil's Tower, it really looks like a tree stump. Again, that's part of the fact that Earth before was a much larger planet, but then the Earth that we know is only a little tiny portion of the bigger Earth, and that is just mind-boggling. But I do think that is completely the case. We don't see, they never show us the entirety of the Earth. They can't. They can't. Maybe for more than one reason.
I know. It's layered reasons usually. I think if we knew exactly where we came from and who we are and what abilities we possess and how to build them and, the different I think there's like different species of humans have different gifts, and certain chakras may have certain powers and just different abilities depending on where your star family is from. So I've always kind of pondered that, because we are all very different, and people's talents really vary. I know Mike has just such a huge energy field, and he's very powerful energetically. It's like he's just a walking scalar wave. I mean, he can really put out some serious energy. And then other people have really strong other kinds of abilities, so we are all very, very different. And I think I wish we had access to our true history. I think that would help people a lot if they knew the truth, and they knew like really what kind of energy that they come from. And I think it would be amazing. I think it would change minds. I think it would open up worlds.
Yes, absolutely. Good to see you, Emma. Glad you could join us. Yeah, it's like all the movies, right? The Civil War movie and everything that came up recently, the Obama's movies. And then you wonder, how many times have we gone through these crazy resets? Here you go. This is the Longzhou Caves in China that was stumbled on by a villager. They're spectacular. I mean, look at the carvings in here. And they actually say the villagers carved these out? Yeah. What? Sure. What? I mean, you ever seen like any of the old martial art movies? I used to watch them nonstop when I was a kid. Like Shaw Brothers, and such. Do you really think these people were doing this, a couple hundred years ago? I don't think so. Oh, no. Why do we have so much buried history? I think it's because Earth is expanding, honestly. That's part of it. And then it gets you thinking about the mud floods. I was saying yesterday while meditating on it, I was wondering if we go through periods of real cooling that might lead to like glaciation, and then when it thaws out, do we end up getting these bigger mud events that bury things under 15, 20 feet? Is it really continental shifting, crustal displacement? That whole crustal displacement theory, in fact all of our theories, even the way plate motion happens, we could be miles off. And we could be thinking we got it all figured out. And yeah, I mean, Dutch sense has been good at pegging quakes. But what if the Earth is really, again, 5 times, maybe 20 times bigger than it is? We've gotten 4 to 5 times bigger than what we see. And that our zone is just one of more than one zone. But that's just on this density too. So what about other densities? We really have such an incomplete picture, and we have a lot more questions, unfortunately, than answers.
The more you learn, the more you figure out you don't know.
Yeah. So, when you talk about Lemuria Mu, what we get with Mu is more of a fifth density civilization and culture. And I would say Lemuria, to me, Lemuria is more like Silver Age. Mu is more like Golden Age. But then also, Atlantis is more of a Bronze Age, but maybe it was also there in part of the Silver. And each one of them is very, very different because, like the guides have said, the very ether changes and all the elements come from the ether. So each is really unique, but somehow we have these vestiges, like these caves, for instance, of the past civilizations.
Well, when I listen to the energy and I listen to the guidance, I hear mu is where we're going to go back to. And we're going to understand crystals, and we're going to understand the importance of crystals and how much information they truly carry. Like, I look at my crystals and they all speak to me. But they can speak to everyone, and they carry layers and layers and layers of information. Like, we truly cannot fathom the layers of information that are in the crystals, and the crystals, they themselves can manifest. And we're going to go back to a time where we truly understand the beauty of nature.
Well, back to the past, right? And again, when you looked at these caves, they were once thought of as bottomless. When one local set out to find how deep they really were, he discovered the first in a series of massive hand-carved caves. The origin is a complete mystery. So this is the Chinese village of Longyu. A uniquely curious local named Wu Anai pooled his money with his neighbors to buy a water pump and started to siphon out a pond in the village. This was siphoning a pond, and look at what was down there. This is insane. So they used the pond for washing, fishing, and other chores, and they always said it was endlessly deep. Boy, that reminds me of my childhood, because there was this one rich house that had a pond that I could never get to the bottom of. And I was always poking it and stuff, and it was just loaded with lily pads and frogs, but I never touched the bottom of it. It was really kind of creepy.
How old were you?
Oh, 5 to 10.
Didn't tie a rope to you?
No, I wandered the neighborhood all the time. I was out there all the time. My mom gave me a long leash, let's say.
Okay.
So there's 24 of these caves in all. Some sink as deep as 100 feet, and they sprawl out at the bottom. While none of the caves are connected, they're all individual, but many of them share thin walls. That's remarkable that primitive builders did not puncture. The walls of the caves are also covered in carved lines and symbols, some of which have not been deciphered. Wow. And that's hardly the mystery. The caves have been dated back to about 200 BC. No historical record of their construction. No evidence of tools used to make them or the purpose. And no one's quite sure where the excavated rock went. The caves seem too big to have been the work of a small group of villagers. And it would have taken 1,000 workers to build them in their day. So the origins of the caves are totally unknown. What do you sense?
Well, I mean, I sense vibrational resonance inside of it. I sense healing. I sense harmony. I sense
It looks like copper.
Well, I don't know if that's there deliberately to protect that specific beam, but I sense going in there and getting a certain vibrational download of the human body. So I think this was to sustain energy. It was a place to go for longevity. It's a sacred temple.
Is that water or clouds?
No, those. It's ether, so I'm picking up both. It's between water and clouds, so it's what I pick up in space. So they're writing like on an etheric cloud blanket.
These are gods, sort of.
Mm-hmm. It's a very sacred area. Very sacred area. So not everyone was allowed in there, and then those that were had to be of a certain vibration. So not just anyone could walk in there, or they would be exposed to particular energy that might actually bring harm to some.
This is fascinating, and this is what I mean. We, instead of fighting each other, why don't we dig up more of our mutual history? I would love to explore China. I'd love to explore a lot of places, and when you have these constant wars going on that are constantly destroying beautiful vestiges of our history, it's just an atrocity. It really, really is. It's just horrible.
Okay, Kay, I don't think that's the same one that has its own ecosystem. I think that's a different one, but I do know what you're talking about. And I mean, just look at this little mousy mouse eating his little hamster eating his piece of cookie that he thinks is cookie, and it's so yummy, and he is so sweet. And actually, I want you guys, please look at the hamster, tune into the hamster, become the hamster, because this is the energy we are going to tune to. And this is going to make everyone feel better, more grounded, and it's going to put very good energy out into the ether. So just tone in on it. This is a form of channeling. We're having a channeling lesson here. So just look at this little guy and, you know, just wonder. You know, the state of wonder in the human mind is very, very useful. It really opens a lot of doors. And just wonder, what would your life be like if you could just simply be that content and that comfortable? And let's put it out there that everyone out there that's facing these storms and going through hard times, that they can find these moments of contentment and peace. So we're going to hold that. We're going to watch the hamster, and we're going to channel this energy, and we're going to send it out into the world and make the world a better place together. So before I do that, I want to say thank you very much to Miss Kelly, Keith, Vildon, and John and Jen for supporting today's video. We really appreciate your support. Thank you. Here we go, guys. Find a happy place in your mind. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. We love you. We appreciate you. We really love that when we come and we get together and send positive energy out there. It totally helps.
Absolutely. As always, guys, Loka Samasta Suki no Bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. And may my thoughts, words, actions, and deeds contribute to that happiness and freedom. We're going to get there. Much love. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Namaste.